Everybody, welcome to the video. It's my first look for the conference championship round of the NFL playoffs for this weekend over on DraftKings. And we have a pretty good two-game slate here. Obviously not a lot of options, but some really fun players to talk about. Now, obviously a tough act to follow from last week, as we probably had the best weekend of football I have ever seen. Bills Chiefs was on an absolute other level, but every single game was decided on the very last play. Really not much more you can ask for. It was a fantastic weekend if you were a football fan. Hopefully it went well for DFS purposes, but looking forward to this week as well. And if you do find this video helpful in any way possible, make sure you leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. I had mentioned the Patreon, but near the end of the month, football is ending, but we have NASCAR starting up on February 6th, so we have a lot of things to look forward to for that. And don't forget, this video was sponsored by PrizePicks, and I did see quite a few of you to take advantage of the PrizePicks promo last week with Patrick Mahomes over 0.5 passing yards, so hopefully that ended well for you guys. But if you want to sign up, it's Daily Fantasy Sports Simplified. Just make sure you use code CPEN. Get the instant deposit match bonus up to $100. It's free money. Why not use it to your advantage? Either go to PrizePicks.com or use the link down below. But I think that'll be it for the plugs for the most part. So without further ado, let's dive into today's video. As always, you will start with the quarterback position. Like I said, guys, not a lot of options to talk about, so we'll probably get through this pretty quickly, but three solid. Okay, I'll kind of break this up in tiers. You have two really good quarterbacks to use. One guy that's kind of in their tier, but not really, just because that game doesn't feature quite the over-under the Chiefs and the Bengals have. They're currently sitting at 54.5. The Rams and 49ers are at 46.5, so you definitely lose quite a bit of value on that. But I do like Matthew Stafford just because he always has the upside to get 300 plus and 3 passing touchdowns. Had a great game last week. But the main two guys that everyone's going to be talking about this weekend is Patrick Mahomes for the Chiefs, 30-point implied team total, and a 7-point favorite at home. And Joe Burrow at a very enticing price point, only $6,600. And his stacking options are quite cheap as well. So DraftKings is making it overall soft pricing. Once again, last week you basically build whatever lineup you want. Pretty much the same this weekend. So we'll start with Patrick Mahomes here. He's honestly, once you factor in point per dollar, I do like Joe Burrow just a little bit more. I'd say Patrick Mahomes is my second quarterback I like. Obviously, you can't go wrong with either. Mahomes has averaged like 40 DraftKings points the past 2 weeks. Has nearly 85 combined if you add the 2 games versus Pittsburgh and Buffalo. But I have nothing bad to say about him. He's just a little bit more expensive. But, I mean, obviously you want to play Mahomes, pair him with Tyreek Hill, Pringle, Travis Kelce, whatever you want to do. They're running back with some of the Bengals. Same thing could be said for Joe Burrow. If you're using him, probably get 2 of his pass catching options or run it back with 1 or 2 on the Kansas City Chiefs. But last time these guys played, Joe Burrow had a fantastic game. Nearly 450 passing yards, nearly 40 fantasy points, 4 touchdowns. He's got great weapons to get the ball to T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, CJ Uzomah, Joe Mixon in the backfield, and Tyler Boyd as well. And then Matthew Stafford if you want to stack the game to get contrarian. Now, it's hard to get contrarian on a 2-game slate. We're talking about, like, sometimes if you get a wide receiver at like 20-30% ownership, you feel good about that on a 2-game slate. Usually that's massive chalk, but not the case. You're going to see guys pushing for some very high ownership. Like, you're going to see Jamar Chase owned by nearly everybody in some contest. But for me personally, in this build, again, nothing wrong with Stafford. He's a good way to get low owned if you want to stack him up with Cooper Kupp, Odell Beckham, or Tyler Higbee, run it back with a guy like Debo or George Kittle. That's not going to be a very chalky build. Now, these guys are going to be decently owned, but it's just because it's such a small slate. But for me personally in this lineup, we're going to rock with Joe Burrow. And if we rock with Joe Burrow, we got to get some of his pass catching options with him. And I already mentioned the 4 main guys I would use. Jamar Chase, obviously the number 1. And if you date back to week 17, and as I always say, this does not mean it's going to happen again, but he did crush this defense for over 250 receiving yards, 12 targets, 11 catches, 3 touchdowns, good for nearly 60 fantasy points. He's the obvious plug and play with Burrow. I still like T. Higgins. If you're looking to get off the chalk, he's still going to be high owned, but he will be lower owned than Jamar Chase, only $5,700. And if you're going to go with Tyler Boyd, you could look at him, but he's not really that exciting of a play. But I do want to double stack with Burrow, and if I'm going to double stack, I'm going to get CJ Uzomah in there as well, because he is just so cheap, and he has 14 targets in the playoffs so far. It's only 2 games and nearly 70 yards in each game. He does have a touchdown, 18 and 14 fantasy points. And his price really isn't moving, and he's going to be involved in the offense. We know that. And KC has been beaten by tight ends in the past. So I think he's at $3,400. I'll gladly take the savings there. I still like Travis Kelce. I like George Kittle. Those guys are fine, but they're about double the price, and I feel like Uzomah is not going to be too far off of them. He doesn't have quite the ceiling, but I mean, for his price point, it is kind of hard to beat. And that's not an expensive stack. Like, if you go with Burrow, Chase, and Uzama, you're still up with 55.50 left for the remaining players. And keep in mind, the pricing is pretty soft. Like, besides Cooper Kupp, everyone's like nearly 7K or below. So you don't have to worry too much, and you can factor in a cheap defense. Now, if we are stacking the Bengals up, we need some run back options on this KC side, which two main guys are Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. $7,000 for Hill and $6,500 for Travis Kelce. And if you want to look at Byron Pringle, who has been getting plenty of targets recently, only $4,300 to score a touchdown versus Buffalo, though it felt like everybody scored a touchdown versus Buffalo and versus KC in that game. But dating back to week 18, 8, 7, and 7 targets and 5 catches in all those games, 10, 20, and 13 fantasy points. That's not bad. Like, he's on the field, he's running a lot of routes, and he's involved in the offense. So I definitely think Pringle is someone you should look at. But between Kelce and Hill, I'm going to prefer Tyreek Hill. Now, if we can fit both in, like if I can plug Kelce in the flex spot, I would feel great about that. But for the main stack here, we're going to roll with this. Now, that's probably how everyone's lineup's going to look like, but it is really hard to pass up as it does look pretty good. But we're going to move on to the running back position, and there's not that many guys to talk about. Like, we have Mixon, Mitchell, K-Makers as guys that are going to see a ton of touches. Then you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jared McKinnon as kind of some secondary options. But outside of those guys, there's really not much to like here. I do like Mixon, but I have all the Bengals passing attack, so I'm going to bypass Mixon in this lineup. If you were not playing Burrow in the passing attack for the Bengals, you'd probably want some exposure to Mixon because some of the Bengals are going to do a lot of damage, and I'm assuming the passing attack does it in this lineup. But if you go on different builds, go with the run game with Mixon, I think that's totally fine. But for me, I'm just going to plug in 2 running backs. I know we're going to see a ton of volume. I mean, maybe you don't love their matchups, and they're both in the same game, but we can break some rules on a 2-game slate. Like, normally I wouldn't want to do like 2 running backs in the same game unless they're just big pass catching backs. Not really the case here for either. But we'll start with Eli Mitchell, $5,900 versus the Rams. Only 3-point dogs. They're on the road, but I can see this game going either way. But he just gets so many touches every single week. If you look since week 12, 27, 22, 21, 21, 27. Only 17 versus Green Bay, but also had 4 targets, which we don't usually see from Eli Mitchell. So that did boost his floor a little bit. Didn't get into the end zone, which kind of sucks, but he's probably going to get you 20-plus touches, hopefully a couple of targets. If he gets into the end zone, you'll be very happy. Below $6,000, so we will plug him in. And then on the opposite side of this game, you have K-Makers, $5,000, just half a year removed from blowing up his Achilles, and he's getting 24 carries and 3 targets, and only 30 total opportunities. Didn't do anything with them. Did have 2 fumbles, but it's still K-Makers, very talented running back on a great offense. He's a favorite at home. Hard not to like him with this price point, and he's obviously the main guy in this backfield. So if we plug in our 2 running backs, we're left with just over $5,000 left for the wide receiver, flex, and defense spot. Now, defense is going to be pretty cheap, so just to see what kind of money we have to work with, we're going to plug in the Rams. They're probably the best defense to use here. I would say between the Rams and the 49ers. I don't really want to use a defense in this Chiefs-Bengals game. I think they both get shredded, so we'll plug in the Rams. If we need to move down to the 49ers, that's fine. You know, Stafford's always good for some turnovers, but Jimmy G's not that great either. So last wide receiver spot, you really could go with just about anybody here. If you wanted to pay all the way up for Cooper Kupp, you could make it fit, $3,400. I'm not sure there's anybody I'd want to use below $3,400, so we might not be able to go with the Cooper Kupp route in this specific lineup unless you move down to the 49ers defense. If you want to get a piece of Cooper Kupp, like we know what Cooper Kupp is. Had nearly 200 yards last week and got into the end zone, iced the game at the end. Like, it's scary not having Kupp on your roster. I don't think he's a must play at that price point, but it is definitely nice to have him. So if we move down to the 49ers, we're still missing out on some decent guys. If you wanted to go double time with Tyler Higbee, you can certainly do that, but it doesn't feel great. So I don't think I'm going to just jam in Cooper Kupp here. We're going to plug the Rams defense back in. We'll try to go maybe more so mid-range about that. So if you just want to plug in a guy like Odell, because I want some exposure to the Rams passing attack, you're left with $7,100 left, and I think that's a decent range to be in. You can go with Joe Mixon, Travis Kelce to get that kind of double run back stack with your double stack of the Bengals, if that makes any sense. So I think that'd definitely be an interesting option. I'll leave it open though. You guys can use your imagination, but it is a fun slate. There's going to be a lot of overlap, so you'll have to try to find a way to get different, but there's definitely a couple ways we can do that here, but it should be fun. I don't think it's going to be as good as last week. That was probably peak NFL, but it should still be a fun slate nonetheless. But with that being said, I think that'll be it for the video. I know it was short, sweet, and to the point, but not much to talk about in a 2-game slate, so hopefully it was helpful least in some way, and help spark your imagination for what to do early on in the week for this weekend's slate. And before we get out of here, make sure you check out Prize Picks if you haven't already. Just you versus the projections. And as of right now, if you sign over there, you can get a free money bonus up to $100 when you use code CPEN when you sign up either at PrizePicks.com, or you can use the link down below. I think that'll be it. I'll get out of here and wish you guys the best of luck heading into this weekend.